The February blizzard descended on Pine Valley, Wisconsin, like nature's own fury unleashed, transforming the peaceful dairy country into a treacherous maze of whiteout conditions and impassable roads. Dave Mitchell pressed his face against the frost-covered window of his century-old farmhouse, watching as another set of headlights crawled desperately along County Road 15, the vehicle's hazard lights blinking frantically through the swirling snow. 3 cars had already slid into ditches within the past hour, their drivers abandoning hope of reaching town before the storm claimed its next victims. Dave knew what was coming next. Soon those stranded souls would be trudging through knee-deep snow toward the only beacon of warmth visible for miles, the red barn that had sheltered his family's dairy operation for over 70 years. What he didn't know was that among tonight's refugees seeking sanctuary would be someone whose presence would transform not just his evening, but his entire future in ways he never could have imagined. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dave Mitchell's boots hit the cold linoleum floor of his kitchen at 4:30 in the morning, just as they had every single day for the past 23 years. The February darkness outside his farmhouse windows was absolute, broken only by the distant glow of the barn's security light cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. His daily routine had become a sacred ritual of survival, each movement practiced and efficient in the way that only comes from decades of necessity. The coffee maker gurgled to life with the push of a button, the machine Sarah had insisted they buy during their first year of marriage, back when 40 Holstein dairy cows seemed like a manageable dream rather than a financial anchor threatening to drag him under. The kitchen still held traces of Sarah's influence 4 years after the farming accident that claimed her life. Her favorite blue ceramic mugs lined the shelf above the sink, dust-free because Dave still used them daily, unable to pack away these small reminders of better times. The refrigerator door displayed Emma's college acceptance letter, now yellowed, at the edges, alongside various bills and notices that served as daily reminders of his mounting financial struggles. Emma, their 19-year-old daughter, was in her second year studying agricultural business at the University of Wisconsin, her tuition payments stretching Dave's already thin budget to its breaking point. Dave poured his coffee into Sarah's favorite mug, adding 2 sugars and a splash of cream, the same way he'd prepared it when she would sit across from him at the small kitchen table, planning their day and dreaming about expanding the operation. Those dreams seemed impossibly naive now, crushed under the weight of medical bills, equipment failures, and the relentless competition from corporate dairy operations that could undersell him at every turn. The Mitchell Dairy Farm, established by his grandfather in 1952, was slowly dying despite Dave's 18-hour workdays and mechanical ingenuity that kept ancient equipment running through sheer determination and salvage parts. Old Blue, his 12-year-old border collie, lifted, his graying muzzle from his bed beside the wood stove, tail thumping weakly against the worn floor in greeting. The dog had been Sarah's shadow originally, following her through the barn during morning milking and afternoon feeding, but after her death, Blue had transferred his loyalty to Dave with the intuitive understanding that comes naturally to working dogs. Dave scratched behind the dog's ears, noting how his companion's arthritis made rising from his bed increasingly difficult with each passing winter. The weather radio crackled with static from its perch on the kitchen counter, the emergency alert system cutting through the morning quiet with urgent warnings. A massive winter storm system was bearing down on southwestern Wisconsin, bringing with it the potential for blizzard conditions, ice accumulation, and wind gusts exceeding 60 miles per hour. County officials advised residents to secure outdoor, equipment, stock emergency supplies, and avoid all non-essential travel after noon. Dave glanced at the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator, noting the red circle around tomorrow's date, the day his mortgage payment was due. A payment he wasn't entirely sure he could make, despite selling off half his herd the previous month. The farmhouse creaked around him as February wind tested its century-old frame, the settling sounds as familiar as his own heartbeat. 3 generations of Mitchells had weathered storms within these walls, but Dave wondered if he would be the last. Emma showed genuine interest in sustainable farming practices and had even written her freshman research paper on small-scale dairy operations. But Dave couldn't bring himself to saddle her with the debt and struggle that defined his daily existence. Better she should use her education to find success in the modern agricultural industry than inherit a failing operation held together by stubbornness and prayer. The morning routine continued with practiced efficiency as Dave pulled on his insulated coveralls and work boots, preparing for the first of 3 daily milking sessions. The 40 remaining Holstein cows represented half of what the farm had supported during its peak years, but even this reduced herd demanded constant attention. Each cow was individually known to Dave, their personalities and quirks as familiar as family members. Bessie, the oldest at 14 years, still produced quality milk despite her age. Daisy had a tendency to kick if approached from the left side. Rosie always tried to escape during pasture rotations, leading the younger cows on brief adventures that inevitably ended with Dave coaxing them back through open gates. Outside, the February air bit through his layers of clothing with vicious intensity, the kind of cold that made his old shoulder injury from a hay baler incident ache with renewed persistence. The path to the barn was slick with ice beneath a dusting of snow, requiring careful navigation to avoid the kind of fall that could leave him immobilized with no one around to help. The barn's warmth welcomed him like an embrace as he slid open. The heavy wooden door, the body heat from 40 cows creating a microclimate that felt tropical compared to the bitter morning air. Dave moved through the milking routine with automatic precision, checking each cow for signs of illness or injury, testing milk quality, cleaning equipment, and recording production numbers in the ledger he'd maintained for over 2 decades. The repetitive nature of dairy farming provided a meditation of sorts, a rhythm that grounded him during times when everything else felt uncertain. These cows depended on him completely, and that responsibility had carried him through the darkest months following Sarah's death, when grief threatened to overwhelm his ability to function. By mid-morning, the storm's advance guard had arrived in the form of light snow and increasing wind, transforming the peaceful rural landscape into something more ominous. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dave spent the pre-storm hours securing equipment that could become projectiles in high winds, moving the cows to the sheltered side of the pasture and checking the barn's structural integrity. The red barn had weathered countless storms over its 70-year existence, but Dave noted several loose boards and a section of roofing that would need attention come spring, assuming he could afford the materials. The ancient tractor, a 1978 Ford that Dave had rebuilt twice, started reluctantly. In the cold, its diesel engine protesting before settling into a familiar rumble. He used the remaining daylight to distribute extra hay to the pasture feeders, knowing the cows would need additional nutrition to maintain body heat during the storm. The weather radio continued its litany of warnings as conditions deteriorated, with the first reports of accidents beginning to filter in from county dispatch. Tom Rodriguez, Dave's 73-year-old neighbor, stopped by around noon driving his equally ancient pickup truck, the vehicle's heat barely functional but still preferable to walking the half-mile between their properties. Tom's farm had been in his family even longer than the Mitchell place, but he'd sold off most of his operation 5 years earlier, keeping only enough land for a vegetable garden and a few chickens. The old man's visit was part social call, part welfare check, the kind of neighbor looking after neighbor care that defined rural communities. Dave invited Tom into the warm kitchen, pouring coffee and listening to his friend's weather concerns with the attention of someone who had learned to respect nature's power through hard experience. Tom had lived through the blizzard of 1978, when drifts reached second-story windows and power outages lasted for a week. The approaching storm showed similar potential for destruction, with meteorologists comparing it to weather systems that occurred perhaps once in a generation. As afternoon deepened toward evening, the storm's intensity increased exponentially, transforming light snow into driving sheets of white that reduced visibility to mere feet. Dave watched through his kitchen window as the world disappeared behind, a curtain of wind-driven precipitation, the familiar landscape becoming an alien environment where landmarks vanished and distances became impossible to judge. The first set of headlights appeared on County Road 15 around 4 o'clock, moving at a crawl as the driver struggled to maintain control on increasingly treacherous pavement. Dave had prepared for stranded travelers, a tradition inherited from his grandfather, who believed that offering shelter during emergencies was both a moral obligation and practical necessity. Someday, he might be the one needing help. Extra blankets were stacked in the living room, and Sarah's enormous soup pot simmered on the stove, filled with vegetable beef soup that could stretch to feed however many people sought refuge. The farmhouse had sheltered storm refugees before, and Dave took quiet pride in maintaining this legacy of rural hospitality. The electricity flickered twice as evening approached, each interruption lasting long enough to remind Dave of his vulnerability to forces beyond his control. The backup generator in the equipment shed was ready if needed, though its fuel supply was limited and would have to be rationed carefully if the outage extended beyond a day or two. Dave made final preparations as darkness fell, checking emergency supplies and ensuring Old Blue had access to his indoor bed beside the wood stove. The first vehicle to slide into the ditch appeared around 6 o'clock, its headlights visible from Dave's kitchen window as the driver attempted to navigate the increasingly impassable road. Within minutes, a second car joined the first, both vehicles abandoned as their occupants recognized the futility of continuing their journeys. Dave pulled on his heaviest coat and boots, preparing to venture into the storm to offer assistance to the stranded travelers who would soon be trudging through the snow toward his barn, seeking warmth and safety from the blizzard's fury. The wind hit him like a physical blow as he stepped outside, driving snow into his face with stinging intensity and making it difficult to breathe. The cold was beyond brutal, reaching temperatures that could cause frostbite within minutes of exposure. Dave fought his way toward the road, following the fence line to maintain his bearings in the whiteout conditions. The abandoned vehicles were barely visible through the storm, their hazard lights blinking weakly through the swirling snow like distress beacons in a white sea. 3 figures emerged from the first car, moving slowly through the deep snow as they made their way toward the farm buildings. Dave called out to them through the wind, his voice barely audible above the storm's roar, and gestured toward the barn rather than attempting conversation in the impossible conditions. The barn's large sliding door required significant effort to open against the wind pressure, but once inside, the relative quiet and warmth provided immediate relief from the brutal conditions outside. The Peterson family introduced themselves once they had caught their breath and shed their snow-covered outer garments. Mike Peterson, an insurance adjuster in his early 40s, had been returning from a client meeting in Madison when the storm intensified beyond the Weather Service's predictions. His wife, Linda, an elementary school teacher, sat beside their 16-year-old twin sons, Josh and Jake, both high school basketball players whose height made them seem older than their years. The family had been traveling together to look at college campuses when the blizzard trapped them on County Road 15. Dave welcomed them with the understated hospitality characteristic of rural Midwesterners, offering hot coffee from a thermos and explaining that his farmhouse could provide better shelter once the wind subsided enough to make the short walk safely. The barn's animal warmth and protection from the wind made it comfortable enough for temporary refuge, and the familiar sounds of cattle provided a surprisingly soothing backdrop to their conversation. The Petersons expressed amazement at the storm's sudden intensity and gratitude for Dave's assistance, clearly relieved to find help in what had seemed like an increasingly desperate situation. A second set of headlights appeared on the road, barely visible through the storm, followed by the sound of another vehicle sliding into the growing collection of abandoned cars. Dave prepared to venture back into the blizzard to assist these new arrivals, pulling his coat tighter and bracing himself for another battle against the wind and snow. The cold seemed to have intensified even further, if such a thing was possible, and Dave wondered how many more travelers would find themselves stranded on his stretch of County Road 15 before the storm finally exhausted itself. The second vehicle's occupants proved to be Deputy Maria Santos and her 17-year-old son, Carlos, their county patrol car equipped with chains, but ultimately no match for the deteriorating road conditions. Deputy Santos had been checking on isolated residents when the storm's ferocity exceeded all forecasts, forcing her to abandon her patrol route in favor of finding immediate shelter. Carlos, a senior at Pine Valley High School, had been riding along during his school's winter break, an arrangement that now seemed fortunate given the circumstances they faced together. Deputy Santos moved with the confident efficiency of someone accustomed to emergency situations, her professional demeanor intact despite being caught off guard by nature's sudden violence. She quickly assessed the barn's suitability as temporary shelter while Carlos helped secure the large door against the wind's relentless pressure. The patrol car's radio crackled with updates from county dispatch, painting a picture of widespread chaos as the storm system proved far more destructive than meteorologists had predicted. Multiple vehicle accidents, power outages affecting thousands of homes, and emergency services stretched beyond capacity created a crisis that would likely extend well into the following day. Dave observed the easy camaraderie that developed. Among the stranded travelers, strangers brought together by shared adversity, finding common ground in their mutual predicament. The Peterson twins showed typical teenage resilience, treating their unexpected adventure with curiosity rather than fear, while their parents maintained worried expressions that spoke to adult understanding of genuine danger. Deputy Santos provided official weather updates and road condition reports that confirmed what everyone already suspected: they would be staying put until the storm exhausted itself, however long that might take. The barn's interior, warmed by 40 Holstein cows and insulated by decades of accumulated hay, provided a surprisingly comfortable refuge despite the howling wind outside. Dave had spent countless hours in this space over the years, but seeing it through his guest's eyes reminded him of its solid construction and practical design. His grandfather had built the structure to last, using techniques and materials that modern construction rarely matched. The heavy timber frame, mortise and tenon joints secured with wooden pegs, and fieldstone foundation had weathered 7 decades of Wisconsin winters without significant deterioration. Linda Peterson, the elementary school teacher, showed particular interest in the farm's operation, asking thoughtful questions about dairy production, seasonal routines, and the challenges facing small family operations. Her genuine curiosity sparked Dave's first enthusiastic conversation about farming in months, reminding him why he had once loved discussing the intricacies of agricultural life. The Peterson twins peppered him with questions about cow behavior, milk production and farm equipment, their urban backgrounds making every aspect of rural life fascinating and exotic. Deputy Santos contributed her own perspective on the community's agricultural heritage, having grown up on a small farm before pursuing law enforcement. Her familiarity with rural life made her an effective intermediary between Dave's sometimes technical explanations and the Peterson family's complete unfamiliarity with dairy operations. Carlos, meanwhile, demonstrated the adaptive nature of teenagers by quickly becoming comfortable with the barn's animal inhabitants, showing no fear of the large cows and even attempting to pet several of the more docile animals. As evening progressed into night, the storm's intensity showed no signs of diminishing, transforming the February landscape into an Arctic wasteland where survival depended entirely on adequate shelter and heat sources. Dave periodically checked the barn's structural integrity, listening for any sounds that might indicate stress or damage from the relentless wind. The building groaned and creaked with each gust, but its solid construction held firm against nature's assault, providing security for both animals and humans seeking refuge within its walls. The conversation gradually turned to personal stories as the hours passed, strangers sharing details of their lives with the intimacy that emergency situations often create. Mike Peterson described his work investigating insurance claims, traveling throughout the Midwest to assess storm damage and accident scenes. His job provided perspective on weather-related disasters, and he expressed amazement at the storm's rapid intensification beyond all professional predictions. Linda shared stories from her classroom, describing the challenges of teaching elementary students in an era of budget cuts and increasing demands on educators. Dave found himself opening up about farm life in ways he rarely did with casual acquaintances. Perhaps influenced by the unusual circumstances or simply grateful for adult conversation after months of relative isolation. He described the satisfaction of working with animals, the frustration of equipment failures, and the constant financial pressures that threatened family farming operations across the region. His listeners showed genuine interest and sympathy, creating a connection that transcended their temporary shared predicament. The warmth generated by 40 cows created a surprisingly comfortable microclimate within the barn, though Dave worried about maintaining adequate ventilation to prevent moisture buildup and ensure air quality remained healthy for extended occupancy. The storm's violence made opening doors or windows impossible, requiring careful monitoring of conditions inside their refuge. The animals seemed remarkably calm, despite the unusual human presence, their placid acceptance of the situation providing reassurance to guests unfamiliar with livestock behavior. Deputy Santos maintained periodic radio contact with county dispatch, providing location updates and requesting information about road conditions throughout the area. The reports painted a picture of widespread devastation as the storm exceeded all preparation measures, with snowfall totals already surpassing historical records and wind speeds causing structural damage to buildings and power infrastructure. Emergency shelters had opened in Pine Valley and neighboring communities, but reaching them required travel through conditions that had already proven deadly for several unfortunate individuals caught unprepared. Around midnight, the winds howling reached a crescendo that seemed to test the very foundations of the barn, causing even the cows to shift restlessly in their stalls. Dave checked the building's structural elements once more, paying particular attention to the large doors and the sections of roof that had shown wear during his earlier inspection. The building's solid construction continued to provide security, but the storm's unprecedented intensity created anxiety about potential failure points that might not withstand such extreme conditions indefinitely. The Peterson family had settled into makeshift beds created from hay bales and spare blankets Dave kept stored in the barn for emergencies, their earlier anxiety giving way to exhausted acceptance of their situation. The twins had fallen asleep despite the storm's noise, their teenage ability to adapt to unusual circumstances serving them well. Mike and Linda Peterson remained awake, speaking quietly about their concerns for the college visit they would miss, and the work obligations that would have to be rescheduled due to their unexpected delay. Deputy Santos established a watch schedule to monitor conditions and maintain radio contact with emergency services, her professional training automatically taking charge of organizing their temporary community. Carlos proved helpful in maintaining the watch, his youthful energy compensating for the adults' increasing fatigue as the night wore on. The radio provided periodic updates on the storm's progress, though meteorologists seemed as surprised as everyone else by the system's unprecedented behavior and uncertain about when conditions might improve enough for safe travel. Dave appreciated having company during what would otherwise have been a long, anxious night alone, with his concerns about the farm's ability to weather such extreme conditions. The presence of other people provided distraction from financial worries and equipment concerns that typically occupied his thoughts during quiet evening hours. The shared experience of facing nature's fury created bonds among strangers that might otherwise have taken months to develop under normal social circumstances. As the night progressed toward morning, fatigue began affecting everyone's mood and judgment, the stress of their situation combining with lack of proper sleep to create tension and irritability. Dave worked to maintain group morale by sharing stories about previous storms he had weathered, emphasizing the barn's proven ability to provide protection during severe weather events. His calm confidence helped reassure his guests, though privately, he worried about the unprecedented nature of this particular storm and its potential to exceed the building's tested limits. The third set of headlights appeared on County Road 15 around 2 in the morning, barely visible through the continuing snowfall, but clearly struggling against the impossible driving conditions. Dave prepared himself for another rescue mission, pulling on his heavy coat and boots despite his exhaustion and the dangerous conditions outside. The temperature had dropped even further during the night, reaching levels that could cause frostbite within minutes of exposure, making any outdoor activity extremely hazardous. Deputy Santos insisted on accompanying him, her professional training and equipment making her better prepared for emergency rescue operations than a civilian farmer. Together, they fought their way through the storm toward the stranded vehicle, using rope tied to the barn door to maintain their connection to safety in the whiteout conditions. The wind's force made progress difficult and dangerous, each step requiring careful consideration to avoid losing their footing or becoming disoriented in the swirling snow. The vehicle that had become the latest victim of the storm's fury proved different from the previous family cars, its sleek lines and expensive appearance suggesting a driver unaccustomed to rural Wisconsin's harsh winter conditions. The car sat at an odd angle in the deep snow beside the road, its driver's side door hanging open as if abandoned in haste. Fresh footprints led away from the vehicle toward the farm buildings, indicating that its occupant had already begun seeking shelter independently. Dave and Deputy Santos followed the footprints through the storm, their flashlight beams barely penetrating the wall of wind-driven snow that reduced visibility to mere inches. The tracks led directly toward the barn, suggesting their unknown visitor possessed good survival instincts despite being caught unprepared by the storm's severity. The effort required to follow the trail in such conditions left both rescuers breathing heavily and concerned about their ability to return safely to shelter. They discovered the storm's latest victim, huddled against the barn's exterior wall, a woman in her early 40s whose expensive clothing and city shoes marked her as completely unprepared for rural Wisconsin's winter fury. Her designer coat, while stylish, provided inadequate protection against sub-zero temperatures and driving snow, leaving her shivering violently and showing early signs of hypothermia. She had managed to find the barn, but lacked the strength to open the heavy door against the wind's pressure, leaving her trapped outside in increasingly dangerous conditions. Dave and Deputy Santos quickly assisted the woman into the barn's warmth, their rescue efforts complicated by her near exhaustion and the difficulty of moving safely through the storm. Once inside, they worked to assess her condition and provide immediate care for what appeared to be the early stages of cold-related injury. The woman's hands showed signs of frostbite, and her core temperature seemed dangerously low, requiring immediate warming measures and careful monitoring throughout the remainder of the night. The newcomer introduced herself as Rebecca Chen, claiming to be a traveling sales consultant whose GPS navigation system had led her onto County Road 15, just as the storm reached its peak intensity. Her story seemed plausible enough, though Dave noticed expensive details in her clothing and accessories that suggested an income level unusual for typical sales representatives. Her car, what little they had seen of it through the storm, appeared to be a high-end luxury model rarely encountered in rural Wisconsin's agricultural communities. Rebecca's condition required immediate attention, her hypothermia symptoms making conversation difficult and coherent responses nearly impossible. Dave and Deputy Santos worked together to provide first aid, using techniques learned through farm, emergency training and law enforcement experience respectively. The barn's warmth gradually improved her condition, though she remained weak and disoriented for several hours after her rescue, requiring constant monitoring to ensure her recovery progressed safely. The addition of another storm refugee created new dynamics within their temporary community, the group now totaling 8 people sheltering in the barn while the blizzard continued its assault on the Wisconsin countryside. Space became more crowded, though the barn's size accommodated everyone reasonably well. More importantly, Rebecca's obvious unfamiliarity with rural life and farming operations created teaching opportunities that helped pass time and distract from their shared predicament. As dawn approached, without any visible lightening of the storm's intensity, Dave began to worry about the duration of their confinement and the resources required to sustain 8 people indefinitely. His emergency supplies were adequate for normal situations, but the storm's unprecedented severity suggested they might be stranded much longer than anyone had anticipated. Food, water, and sanitation would become increasingly important concerns. If their temporary community extended beyond a single night's duration. The morning brought no relief from the storm's fury. Wind speeds actually increasing with the arrival of daylight and creating whiteout conditions that made any outdoor activity essentially suicidal. Deputy Santos's radio reports confirmed that emergency services remained overwhelmed, with rescue operations suspended until conditions improved enough to allow safe travel. The group settled in for what appeared to be an extended stay, their temporary barn community requiring organization and cooperation to maintain morale and ensure everyone's needs were met adequately. Rebecca's recovery progressed slowly throughout. The morning, her hypothermia symptoms gradually subsiding as her core temperature returned to normal levels. She remained weak and disoriented, sleeping frequently and showing little interest in conversation or food. Dave worried about potential complications from her cold exposure, though Deputy Santos's first aid training suggested her condition was improving within expected parameters for someone who had experienced severe hypothermia but received prompt treatment. The Peterson family adapted to their extended stay with typical Midwestern practicality, the parents helping organize sleeping arrangements and food distribution, while the twins entertained themselves by learning about dairy farming operations. Carlos Santos proved equally adaptable. his teenage resilience allowing him to treat their adventure as an exciting story he would eventually tell his friends, rather than a dangerous emergency requiring adult concern and intervention. Dave found himself serving as unofficial host and guide for his unexpected guests, explaining farm operations and rural life while trying to maintain normal routines despite the extraordinary circumstances. The morning milking presented logistical challenges with 8 people sharing the barn space, but his guests showed understanding and even curiosity about the process. Several offered to help, though Dave politely declined assistance from people unfamiliar with handling large dairy cows. The storm continued without mercy throughout the day, its intensity showing no signs of the gradual decrease that typically mark the end of severe weather systems. Radio reports described unprecedented snowfall totals and wind speeds that had caused widespread power outages, structural damage, and transportation shutdowns across multiple counties. The National Weather Service extended all warnings and advisories, acknowledging that their computer models had failed to predict the storm's exceptional behavior. By afternoon, the group had established routines and social hierarchies that made their extended confinement more bearable, though tensions began emerging as the novelty of their situation wore off and the reality of indefinite delay settled in. Mike Peterson worried about missing important business appointments, while Linda fretted about her students and substitute teaching arrangements. Deputy Santos maintained professional calm, but clearly felt frustrated by her inability to perform her regular duties during what was obviously a county-wide emergency. Rebecca remained the group's most mysterious member, her expensive clothing and obvious unfamiliarity with rural life creating curiosity about her background and circumstances. She claimed to represent a consulting firm specializing in agricultural efficiency, though her knowledge of farming operations seemed limited for someone supposedly working in that field. Dave noticed discrepancies in her story, but attributed them to lingering effects from her hypothermia and the stress of her near-death experience in the storm. The second evening brought new challenges, as food supplies began showing strain from feeding 8 people instead of 1, and the reality of potentially extended confinement forced consideration of rationing and resource management. Dave's emergency. Preparations had been designed for his personal needs during typical power outages, not for supporting a temporary community during an unprecedented weather disaster. Deputy Santos helped organize distribution systems that would ensure everyone received adequate nutrition while conserving supplies for uncertain duration. The barn's warmth and protection continued holding against the storm's assault, though Dave monitored structural elements with increasing concern as wind speeds reached levels that tested even the building's proven construction. Several loose boards rattled ominously with each gust, and the large doors strained against their hinges despite being securely latched. The building's 70-year history of weathering severe storms provided confidence, but this particular blizzard exceeded all previous experience and pushed every system to its limits. As the group settled in for their second night in the barn, conversations turned toward personal backgrounds and life stories, the kind of intimate sharing that emergency situations often create among strangers. Rebecca participated minimally in these discussions, claiming fatigue and lingering effects from her cold exposure, though Dave suspected her reticence stemmed from other causes. Her expensive watch, designer shoes, and subtle details in her clothing suggested a background considerably more affluent than her claimed profession would typically support. The night passed more easily than the first, everyone having adapted to the unusual sleeping arrangements and found ways to remain reasonably comfortable despite the circumstances. The storm's violence continued unabated, but the group had developed confidence in their shelter and established routines that made their confinement bearable. Dave appreciated the company and conversation, a welcome change from the solitary existence that had defined his life since Sarah's death 4 years earlier. Morning brought the first signs of meteorological change, wind speeds decreasing slightly, and the snow's intensity showing occasional brief lulls that allowed glimpses of the devastated landscape outside. Deputy Santos reported that emergency services were beginning limited rescue operations in areas where conditions permitted, though County Road 15 remained completely impassable and unlikely to be cleared for several more days. The group prepared for at least one more day of confinement, possibly longer, depending on equipment availability and priority rankings for snow removal operations. Rebecca's recovery accelerated on the third morning, her color returning to normal and her speech becoming clearer as the last effects of hypothermia faded from her system. She began participating more actively in group conversations, though Dave noticed she remained evasive about specific details of her work and personal background. When Mike Peterson asked about her consulting business, Rebecca provided vague responses about efficiency optimization and market analysis that sounded professional, but revealed little concrete information about her actual expertise or client. The mystery surrounding Rebecca deepened as Dave observed inconsistencies between her claimed profession and her obvious unfamiliarity with basic agricultural concepts. During discussions about farming challenges, she asked elementary questions that any agricultural consultant should have known, yet she demonstrated sophisticated understanding of business finance and market dynamics that seemed beyond typical sales representative training. Her expensive clothing had dried and revealed designer labels that would cost more than most consultants earned in several months, creating additional questions about her true background and circumstances. Dave's natural curiosity, honed by decades of troubleshooting mechanical problems and diagnosing livestock health issues, led him to pay closer attention to Rebecca's behavior and statements. She carried herself with unconscious authority that suggested experience in leadership positions, and her occasional comments about business operations revealed knowledge of corporate structures and financial mechanisms typically available only to senior executives. When she thought no one was listening, Dave caught fragments of phone conversations where Rebecca spoke with unmistakable command authority to someone she addressed only as Martinez. The storm's gradual weakening allowed occasional glimpses of the devastation outside, revealing a landscape transformed beyond recognition by 3 days of unprecedented snowfall and wind. Drifts reached second-story heights in some areas, while other sections had been scoured down to bare ground by the relentless wind. Dave's farmyard looked like an alien environment, familiar landmarks buried or relocated by the storm's fury. The expensive car that had brought Rebecca to their refuge sat completely buried, except for a small portion of its roof, testament to the storm system's incredible power. Deputy Santos maintained regular contact with emergency services, receiving updates that painted a picture of widespread destruction across multiple counties. Power outages affected hundreds of thousands of residents, while transportation networks remained completely shut down, except for limited emergency operations using specialized equipment. The National Guard had been activated to assist with rescue, operations and essential supply delivery, but even their capabilities were severely challenged by the unprecedented conditions. The Peterson family had adapted remarkably well to their extended confinement, with Linda Peterson even offering to help with morning milking operations despite her complete lack of experience with dairy cows. Dave appreciated her willingness to learn, though he politely declined her assistance for safety reasons. The twins had become genuinely interested in farming operations, asking detailed questions about breeding programs, feed efficiency, and seasonal management practices that demonstrated genuine curiosity rather than mere politeness. Carlos Santos proved to be a natural with the cattle, showing no fear of the large animals and quickly learning to read their individual personalities and moods. His comfort around livestock surprised Dave, who discovered that Carlos had spent summers working on his uncle's ranch in Texas before his family moved to Wisconsin. The teenager's experience with cattle made him a valuable assistant during feeding operations, freeing Dave to focus on equipment maintenance and structural repairs needed after the storm's assault. Rebecca began showing more interest in the farm's financial aspects, asking pointed questions about operational costs, profit margins, and market pressures that went well beyond casual curiosity. Her inquiries demonstrated sophisticated understanding of business economics, including concepts like cash flow analysis, debt-to-equity ratios, and market penetration strategies that seemed unusual for someone claiming to work in agricultural efficiency consulting. Dave found himself providing more detailed answers than he typically would to strangers, drawn into discussions that felt more like professional consultations than casual conversation. The barn's temporary community had developed its own social dynamics over 3 days of shared confinement, with natural leaders emerging and informal responsibilities being distributed based on individual skills and interests. Deputy Santos handled communication with outside authorities and maintained overall security awareness, while Linda Peterson organized meal preparation and general housekeeping tasks. Mike Peterson contributed practical problem-solving skills, helping Dave with minor equipment repairs and maintenance issues that arose during their extended stay. Dave discovered unexpected pleasure in having people to talk with about farming operations, realizing how much he had missed intellectual stimulation and professional discussion since Sarah's death. His conversations with Rebecca, despite her mysterious background, challenged him to articulate his farming philosophy and business strategies in ways he hadn't considered for years. Her questions forced him to examine assumptions about traditional farming methods and consider alternative approaches that might improve efficiency or profitability. The third day brought significant improvement in weather conditions, with wind speeds dropping to manageable levels and snowfall becoming intermittent rather than continuous. Deputy Santos reported that county road crews had begun clearing operations on major routes, though secondary roads, like County Road 15, remained low priority and would likely stay impassable for several more days. The group began discussing eventual departure plans, though everyone recognized that extraction would require specialized equipment capable of handling extreme snow conditions. Rebecca's expensive car would clearly require professional recovery services, assuming it hadn't sustained damage from being buried under tons of snow for multiple days. The vehicle's luxury features and high-end construction suggested it might survive the ordeal, but extraction would be complicated and expensive. Dave offered to contact local towing services once communication became more reliable, though he suspected that specialized equipment would be required for such challenging recovery conditions. During quiet moments, Dave found himself studying Rebecca with growing curiosity about her true identity and circumstances. Her mannerisms suggested comfort with authority and decision-making that went beyond typical consulting roles, while her knowledge of business finance seemed more appropriate for corporate executive positions. She handled stress with calm professionalism that indicated experience managing crisis situations, yet she claimed to work in a field that rarely involved such high-pressure circumstances. The afternoon brought the first successful radio contact with Emma, Dave's daughter, who had been frantically worried about her father's safety during the unprecedented storm. Her relief at learning he was safe and helping other storm victims was evident even through the poor radio connection, and she promised to drive home from university as soon as roads became passable. Dave looked forward to introducing Emma to his unexpected guests, particularly Rebecca, whose business background might provide interesting career insights for a young woman studying agricultural business. Rebecca's phone had remained dead since her rescue, but as conditions improved, she managed to restore partial functionality using a charging cable connected to Deputy Santos's patrol car battery. Her first successful call lasted only minutes, but Dave overheard enough to confirm his suspicions that she held a position of considerable authority within whatever organization employed her. Her tone was decisive and commanding, discussing resource allocation and strategic decisions with confidence that suggested senior executive responsibilities. The Peterson twins had used their forced confinement productively, completing homework assignments and even researching career opportunities in agricultural fields that their barn experience had made interesting. Josh expressed particular fascination with sustainable farming practices and environmental conservation, while Jake showed more interest in the mechanical and technological aspects of modern farming operations. Their genuine enthusiasm reminded Dave why he had originally fallen in love with agricultural life before financial pressures and personal losses had diminished his passion for the work. Evening conversations had become a highlight of their daily routine, with group members sharing stories and perspectives that created genuine connections despite their vastly different backgrounds. Rebecca contributed more actively to these discussions. As her strength returned, though she remained careful to avoid specific details about her work or personal life, her comments revealed extensive travel experience and familiarity with diverse business environments, suggesting a career that involved significant responsibility and international exposure. Dave began noticing subtle signs that Rebecca was conducting some form of evaluation or assessment during their conversations about farming operations. Her questions seemed designed to probe specific aspects of his business knowledge and decision-making processes, while her responses to his explanations suggested she was gathering information for purposes beyond casual interest. Her background in consulting might explain such behavior, but the depth and focus of her inquiry seemed more intensive than typical professional curiosity would warrant. The fourth morning brought dramatically improved conditions, with clear skies and diminishing wind creating the first opportunity for outdoor assessment of storm damage. Dave ventured outside to check on buildings and equipment, accompanied by Carlos Santos and the Peterson twins, who were eager to see the transformed landscape. The devastation was extensive but not catastrophic, with most structures having survived intact despite suffering various degrees of cosmetic damage from wind and flying debris. Rebecca's luxury car remained completely buried under a massive drift, only its roof antenna visible above the accumulated snow. The vehicle's recovery would require specialized equipment and considerable effort, making it unlikely that she could retrieve it for several days, even after road clearing operations reached their location. Dave offered to drive her to town once. County Road 15 became passable, an offer she accepted with gratitude that seemed genuine despite her continued evasiveness about her ultimate destination and purpose for being in the area. The morning's outdoor expedition revealed that the storm had created opportunities as well as challenges, with natural snow fencing having protected some vulnerable areas while exposing others to wind damage. Dave's farming experience allowed him to assess potential impacts on spring operations, noting areas where drainage might be affected and fields where soil erosion could become problematic. The Peterson family listened with interest as he explained how winter conditions influenced agricultural planning and seasonal preparation strategies. Deputy Santos received word that county maintenance crews would reach their section of road within 48 hours, weather permitting, which meant the group's enforced community would soon dissolve as everyone returned to their normal lives and responsibilities. The prospect of departure created mixed emotions among the barn's temporary residents, with genuine friendships having developed during their shared ordeal. Plans were made to stay in contact and arrange future visits under more pleasant circumstances. Rebecca announced her intention to remain in the Pine Valley area for several additional days once transportation became available, claiming her consulting assignment required follow-up meetings with potential clients in the region. Her decision surprised Dave, who hadn't been aware of any significant agricultural operations in the immediate area that might require consulting services. Most local farms were small family operations like his own, struggling to survive rather than expanding in ways that might justify professional consulting assistance. The afternoon brought visitors from outside their isolated community as county emergency personnel arrived on snowmobiles to check on residents and assess infrastructure damage. The rescue team confirmed that all roads remained impassable for normal vehicles, but conditions were improving rapidly as temperatures rose and wind speeds continued decreasing. Emergency supplies were offered to the barn's residents, though Dave's preparation and the group's resource sharing had prevented any serious shortages during their confinement. Rebecca's interaction with the emergency personnel provided another glimpse into her true background as she handled official inquiries with practiced ease and demonstrated familiarity with emergency management protocols that seemed beyond typical civilian experience. Her questions about regional recovery operations and resource allocation priorities suggested professional interest in disaster response coordination, adding another layer to the mystery surrounding her actual identity and responsibilities. The emergency team's visit marked the beginning of the end for their temporary community, as outside contact was re-established and individual members began making arrangements for departure once transportation became available. The shared experience had created bonds that transcended their brief acquaintance, with promises to maintain contact and invitations for future visits being exchanged among people who had been complete strangers just days earlier. Dave found himself particularly reluctant to see Rebecca leave, despite his growing suspicions about her true identity and purpose. Their conversations about farming operations had rekindled his enthusiasm for agricultural innovation and strategic planning, while her obvious intelligence and business experience provided perspectives he rarely encountered in his rural community. Her mysterious background only added to her appeal, creating curiosity about what kind of work could have brought someone of her apparent sophistication to rural Wisconsin during winter's worst storm. The fourth evening brought a sense of impending conclusion to their shared adventure as everyone prepared for departure once road conditions permitted normal travel. The barn that had provided sanctuary during the storm's fury would soon return to its normal function as a dairy operation facility, but the memories of their temporary community would remain long after the emergency had passed. The experience had reminded Dave of the importance of human connection and the satisfaction that came from helping others during times of crisis. Rebecca approached Dave privately as the evening wound down, expressing gratitude for his hospitality and life-saving assistance during her near-fatal exposure to the storm. Her thanks seemed genuine and heartfelt, though Dave sensed she wanted to discuss something more substantial than simple appreciation for his help. Their conversation was interrupted by Deputy Santos announcing new radio contact with County Dispatch, preventing what might have been an important revelation about Rebecca's true circumstances and purpose for being in the area. The night passed peacefully, with improved weather conditions allowing everyone to sleep more soundly despite anticipation of imminent departure. Dave lay awake longer than usual, reflecting on the unexpected adventure that had transformed 3 days of solitary storm survival into a memorable experience of community and connection. The presence of strangers in his barn had reminded him how much he valued human companionship and intellectual stimulation, aspects of life that had been largely absent since Sarah's death 4 years earlier. Morning brought the sound of heavy equipment approaching on County Road 15 as county maintenance crews began the challenging task of clearing accumulated snow and restoring normal transportation access. The process would take most of the day, but its beginning marked the end of their isolation and the start of individual departures back to normal life responsibilities. The barn's temporary residents began gathering personal belongings and preparing for the transition from their emergency community back to their separate existences. Rebecca's preparation for departure revealed additional expensive items that reinforced Dave's suspicions about her true financial status and professional position. Her luggage, recovered from the buried car with considerable difficulty, contained clothing and accessories that would cost more than most people earned in months. Her casual treatment of obviously expensive items suggested someone accustomed to luxury and comfortable with significant personal wealth, contradicting her claimed identity as a traveling sales consultant working in agricultural efficiency. The county road crew's arrival brought a flurry of activity as heavy machinery began the arduous process of clearing 3 days' worth of accumulated snow from County Road 15. Dave watched from his kitchen window as massive snowplows pushed through. Drifts that reached above their blade heights, the operators working with practiced efficiency despite the challenging conditions. The sound of diesel engines and scraping metal provided a soundtrack of civilization returning to normal after days of isolation and emergency survival. Rebecca stood beside Dave at the window, observing the snow removal operation with what seemed like professional interest in the logistics and coordination required for such large-scale infrastructure recovery. Her comments about equipment efficiency and resource allocation suggested familiarity with complex operational management that went far beyond her claimed consulting background. Dave noticed she was taking detailed notes in an expensive leather portfolio, recording observations that seemed more comprehensive than casual interest would warrant. The Peterson family had already contacted their insurance company and arranged for alternative transportation once the road became passable. Their practical Midwestern approach to crisis management serving them well during the transition from emergency shelter back to normal life. Mike Peterson expressed genuine appreciation for Dave's hospitality and extended an invitation for him to visit their suburban Milwaukee home whenever he found himself in the area. Linda Peterson exchanged contact information with Dave, promising to send educational materials about agricultural programs that might interest Emma when she completed her university studies. Deputy Santos coordinated departure logistics with typical law enforcement efficiency, ensuring everyone had viable transportation arrangements and emergency contact information in case of complications during their journeys home. Her patrol car had survived the storm without significant damage, though it would require careful navigation through partially cleared roads until normal traffic conditions were restored. Carlos helped her prepare their vehicle for departure while maintaining the easy rapport he had developed with Dave's cattle during their extended barn stay. The twins had documented their adventure extensively using their smartphones, creating a digital record of their storm experience that they planned to share with classmates and use for a school presentation about agriculture and rural life. Their genuine enthusiasm for farming operations had impressed Dave, who provided them with contact information for university agricultural programs that might interest them as they considered future career options. Josh expressed particular interest in sustainable farming practices, while Jake remained fascinated by the mechanical and technological aspects of modern dairy operations. Rebecca's departure preparations revealed additional layers of mystery. about her true identity and circumstances. Her luggage, finally retrieved from the buried luxury car with considerable effort, contained business documents that she carefully shielded from casual observation, but which Dave glimpsed briefly as she organized her belongings. The letterhead appeared to be from a major corporation, though he couldn't make out specific details before Rebecca discreetly closed the portfolio containing the materials. As the road clearing progressed throughout the morning, Rebecca approached Dave with an unusual request that caught him completely off guard. She asked if he would be willing to give her a private tour of his entire farming operation, expressing specific interest in his financial records, operational efficiency metrics, and long-term business planning strategies. Her request seemed far more detailed than typical curiosity about agricultural life, leading Dave to wonder if she was conducting some form of professional assessment for purposes she hadn't disclosed. Dave agreed to the tour, his natural hospitality overriding his growing suspicions about Rebecca's true motives and identity. They began in the milking parlor, where Rebecca asked sophisticated questions about production costs, quality control measures, and market pricing mechanisms that demonstrated considerable knowledge of business finance and operational analysis. Her inquiries focused particularly on areas where efficiency improvements might increase profitability or reduce operational expenses, suggesting expertise in business optimization strategies. The tour continued through Dave's equipment storage, areas where Rebecca examined his aging machinery with the analytical eye of someone familiar with capital expenditure planning and asset depreciation schedules. She asked detailed questions about maintenance costs, replacement timelines, and financing options that revealed understanding of complex business financial planning, typically available only to experienced executives or professional consultants. Her comments about equipment efficiency and technological upgrades suggested familiarity with industrial modernization strategies. Rebecca's interest in Dave's financial records surprised him with its intensity and specificity, as she requested access to profit and loss statements, cash flow projections, and debt service obligations that most visitors would never think to examine. Her analysis of his financial situation was both thorough and sympathetic, acknowledging the challenges facing small family farming operations, while identifying specific areas where strategic improvements might enhance viability and profitability. Dave found himself opening up about his financial struggles in ways he rarely did with anyone, perhaps influenced by Rebecca's obvious expertise and genuine interest in his situation. He explained the mounting pressures of equipment replacement costs, rising feed prices, declining milk prices, and the constant threat of larger corporate operations undercutting his market position. Rebecca listened with professional attention, taking detailed notes and asking probing questions that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of agricultural economics. The conversation moved from the barn to Dave's kitchen, where Rebecca spread out various documents and began creating what appeared to be a comprehensive analysis of his farming operations' strengths, weaknesses, and potential improvement opportunities. Her work was systematic and professional, utilizing analytical frameworks that suggested extensive experience in business evaluation and strategic planning. Dave watched with growing fascination as she created charts and projections that revealed patterns in his operation he had never recognized. Rebecca's analysis identified specific areas where targeted investments could significantly improve the farm's profitability and long-term viability, including equipment upgrades, facility improvements, and market diversification strategies that could reduce dependence on volatile commodity prices. Her recommendations were detailed and practical, demonstrating deep understanding of both agricultural operations and business finance that went far beyond anything a typical consulting representative would possess. As the afternoon progressed, Dave began pressing Rebecca for more information about her background and the reasons for her intensive interest in his farming operation. Her responses remained evasive, but he noticed increasing signs of internal struggle, as if she was debating whether to reveal information she had been keeping secret. Their conversation was interrupted multiple times by phone calls that Rebecca took privately, speaking in authoritative tones that confirmed Dave's suspicions about her senior executive status. The road-clearing operation reached their section of County Road 15 by late afternoon, with county crews successfully opening a single lane for emergency traffic and limited civilian use. The Peterson family was among the first to depart, their expressions of gratitude and promises to stay in contact providing a warm conclusion to friendships forged during their shared emergency experience. Deputy Santos and Carlos followed shortly. Afterward, with the deputy promising to check on Dave's welfare during her regular patrol rounds once normal operations resumed. Rebecca's luxury car remained buried under tons of snow, requiring specialized recovery equipment that wouldn't be available for several more days. Dave offered to drive her to town or provide accommodation until professional towing services could extract her vehicle, an offer she accepted while continuing to maintain her mysterious reluctance to discuss her true circumstances and purpose. For being in the Pine Valley area during the worst storm in decades. As evening approached, with only Dave and Rebecca remaining at the farm, the atmosphere became more intimate and conducive to honest conversation than had been possible during their group confinement in the barn. Rebecca seemed to be wrestling with some internal decision, her earlier professional composure giving way to obvious emotional conflict about whether to continue her deception or reveal her true identity and circumstances. Dave prepared a simple dinner using ingredients from his emergency supplies, creating a comfortable domestic environment that encouraged relaxation and open communication. Rebecca's expensive clothing and accessories seemed incongruous in his modest farmhouse kitchen, but her obvious intelligence and business expertise made her a fascinating dinner companion despite the mystery surrounding her background and purpose. The conversation during dinner focused initially on general topics, but gradually became more personal as Rebecca began sharing carefully selected details about her life and career. She revealed that she was indeed involved in business consulting, though on a much larger scale than she had initially indicated, working with major corporations and investment firms on strategic planning and operational optimization projects that involved millions of dollars in capital allocation decisions. Dave listened with growing amazement as Rebecca described her work analyzing potential investment opportunities in various industries, including agriculture, where she specialized in identifying undervalued operations with significant improvement potential. Her expertise in business evaluation and financial analysis explained her intensive interest in his farming operation, though he still didn't understand why someone of her apparent stature would be traveling alone through rural Wisconsin during winter's worst weather conditions. Rebecca's internal struggle became more apparent as dinner progressed, with obvious conflict between her desire to maintain her deception and growing recognition that continued dishonesty was becoming impossible to sustain. Her professional training in maintaining confidentiality warred with personal gratitude for Dave's life-saving assistance and genuine appreciation for his character and farming expertise. The decision she was wrestling with seemed to involve significant professional and personal risk. As they moved from dinner to coffee by the fireplace, Rebecca finally reached her internal tipping point and began revealing the truth about her identity and circumstances. She explained that her real name was Rebecca Chen, and she was indeed a business consultant, but not the traveling sales representative she had claimed to be during their barn confinement. Her actual position was Chief Investment Officer for Chen Capital Partners, a multi-billion-dollar investment firm specializing in sustainable agriculture and rural economic development projects. Dave listened in stunned silence as Rebecca explained that she had been traveling to Pine Valley specifically to evaluate his dairy operation as a potential investment opportunity, having identified the Mitchell Dairy Farm through research into struggling family operations with significant improvement potential. Her investment firm specialized in providing capital and expertise to help viable agricultural businesses modernize their operations and achieve long-term sustainability while preserving family ownership and local community benefits. The revelation that Rebecca was a billionaire investor rather than a simple sales consultant recontextualized everything about their interaction during the storm, from her sophisticated business questions to her expensive clothing and obvious executive authority. Dave struggled to process the information, realizing that the woman he had rescued from certain death in the blizzard possessed the financial resources to transform his failing farm into a thriving operation or destroy it entirely, depending on her assessment of his potential. Rebecca explained that her investment firm had been monitoring agricultural operations throughout the Midwest, looking for family farms with strong operational foundations but inadequate capital for necessary modernization and expansion. The Mitchell Dairy Farm had attracted attention due to its excellent reputation for animal care, quality milk production, and community involvement, despite its obvious financial struggles and aging infrastructure. Her visit had been intended as a preliminary evaluation to determine whether formal investment discussions would be worthwhile. The irony of the situation was not lost on either of them, as Dave realized that the storm that had threatened to destroy his farm had instead brought him face to face with someone who could save it. Rebecca's near-death experience during the blizzard had provided her with unprecedented insight into Dave's character, work ethic, and genuine commitment to agricultural excellence that no formal business presentation could have revealed. Her investment decision would now be based on personal knowledge rather than abstract financial analysis. Dave's initial reaction was skepticism and suspicion, wondering if Rebecca's revelation was another deception designed to manipulate him for unknown purposes. Her story seemed too convenient, too perfectly aligned with his desperate need for financial assistance to be entirely credible. He questioned her about specific details of her background and investment firm, testing her knowledge and looking for inconsistencies that might reveal continued dishonesty about her true identity and motives. Rebecca's responses to Dave's questions were detailed and verifiable, including specific information about her company's previous agricultural investments, regulatory filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and contact information for references who could confirm her identity and professional credentials. She understood his skepticism and encouraged him to verify her claims through independent research before making any decisions about potential business relationships. As the evening progressed, Rebecca provided comprehensive details about her investment firm's approach to agricultural partnerships, emphasizing their commitment to preserving family ownership while providing capital and expertise needed for operational improvements. Their typical arrangement involved equity partnership rather than debt financing, allowing farm families to maintain control while accessing resources necessary for modernization and growth. The terms she described were generous and designed to ensure long-term success rather than short-term profit extraction. Dave found himself cautiously optimistic about the possibilities Rebecca's revelation presented, though he remained wary of making hasty decisions about something as important as his farm's future. The opportunity to access professional business, expertise, and significant capital resources was exactly what he needed to modernize his operation and ensure its viability for Emma's generation. But the complexity of partnership arrangements with billion-dollar investment firms seemed overwhelming. For someone accustomed to simple agricultural transactions, Rebecca sensed Dave's uncertainty and offered to arrange a formal presentation by her investment team, including agricultural specialists, financial analysts, and legal experts who could explain their partnership terms and answer specific questions about implementation timelines, capital requirements, and operational changes that would be involved. She emphasized that there would be no obligation to proceed beyond the initial consultation phase, allowing Dave time to fully evaluate the opportunity before making any commitments. The conversation continued late into the evening, covering topics ranging from sustainable farming practices and organic certification processes to market diversification strategies and agritourism development possibilities. Rebecca's knowledge of agricultural business was comprehensive and current, demonstrating genuine expertise rather than superficial familiarity with farming operations. Her investment firm's previous successes with similar projects provided concrete examples of how strategic partnerships could transform struggling family farms into profitable enterprises. Dave's questions gradually shifted from skepticism about Rebecca's identity to genuine interest in her firm's agricultural investment approach and the specific opportunities it might create for his operation. Her descriptions of modernized milking facilities, automated feeding systems, and direct-to-consumer marketing programs painted a picture of possibilities he had never seriously considered due to capital constraints and limited business experience beyond traditional commodity sales. As midnight approached, Rebecca made a formal offer to Dave that would change his life forever. Chen Capital Partners was prepared to invest $2.5 million in the Mitchell Dairy Farm's modernization and expansion, providing state-of-the-art equipment, facility improvements, and working capital necessary to transform the operation into a showcase of sustainable dairy farming. The partnership terms would allow Dave to maintain majority ownership while accessing professional management expertise and marketing resources that could triple his annual revenue within 3 years. The offer was contingent on Dave's agreement to implement comprehensive sustainability practices, obtain organic certification, and participate in educational programs that would demonstrate advanced farming techniques to other agricultural operations considering similar improvements. His farm would become a model for rural economic development, proving that family operations could compete successfully with corporate agriculture when provided with adequate capital and professional expertise. Dave's emotional response to Rebecca's offer was overwhelming, as the financial security and operational improvements she described represented everything he had dreamed about during years of struggle and uncertainty. The opportunity to ensure his farm's survival and provide Emma with a thriving agricultural business to inherit was beyond anything he had dared hope for during his darkest moments of doubt and financial pressure. Rebecca's offer included immediate implementation of emergency improvements needed to address his most pressing operational problems, including equipment repairs, facility maintenance, and cash flow stabilization that would allow him to focus on long-term planning rather than daily survival concerns. Her investment firm's resources could resolve his immediate financial crisis while providing foundation for sustainable growth and profitability that would ensure his operations' viability for generations to come. The evening concluded with Dave's tentative acceptance of Rebecca's offer, pending formal review of partnership agreements and consultation with legal and financial advisors who could help him understand the complex terms and implications of such a significant business relationship. Rebecca provided contact information for her legal team and encouraged Dave to engage independent counsel to ensure his interests were properly protected throughout the negotiation process. As Rebecca prepared to spend the night in Dave's guest room before departing the following day, Both realized that their accidental meeting during the blizzard had created an opportunity that would benefit everyone involved. Dave would receive the capital and expertise needed to save his farm, while Rebecca's investment firm would gain a showcase agricultural operation that demonstrated their commitment to rural economic development and sustainable farming practices. The storm that had threatened to destroy Dave's livelihood had instead brought him face to face with salvation in the form of a billionaire investor whose near-death experience in his barn had provided her with unprecedented insight into his character and potential. Their partnership would prove that chance encounters during times of crisis could create opportunities that careful planning and deliberate networking might never achieve. 6 months later, the Mitchell dairy farm had been transformed into a model of sustainable agriculture, featuring state-of-the-art equipment, modernized facilities, and innovative marketing programs that sold premium organic dairy products directly to consumers throughout the Midwest. Dave's annual revenue had increased by 200%, while his operational efficiency improvements had reduced environmental impact and enhanced animal welfare standards that attracted positive attention from agricultural organizations nationwide. Emma had transferred to an agricultural business program closer to home, eager to learn the advanced management techniques that would be necessary to operate the modernized farm her father was creating with Rebecca's partnership. Her thesis project focused on sustainable dairy farming practices, using her family's operation as a case study for how strategic investment could revitalize rural agricultural communities while preserving family ownership and local economic benefits. Rebecca visited the farm regularly in her capacity as Chen Capital Partners' agricultural investment director, but her relationship with Dave had evolved beyond business partnership into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to agricultural excellence. Their collaboration had become a template for her firm's rural investment strategy, proving that personal relationships and character assessment were as important as financial analysis in identifying successful partnership opportunities. The barn that had provided emergency shelter during the February blizzard had been renovated and expanded to accommodate the farm's increased production capacity, but Dave had insisted on preserving a small section as a memorial to the storm that had changed his life forever. A simple plaque commemorated the night when a routine act of rural hospitality had led to a partnership that saved his family's agricultural legacy and created opportunities he had never dared to imagine. The morning sun streamed through the frost-covered windows of Dave's farmhouse as he prepared breakfast for his unexpected houseguest, still processing the earth-shattering revelation from the previous evening. Rebecca Chen, billionaire investment mogul, sat at his modest kitchen table, reviewing documents on her laptop with the same intensity she had shown when analyzing his farming operation. The contrast between her corporate sophistication and his rural simplicity seemed even more pronounced in daylight. Yet their conversation flowed with the easy familiarity of longtime colleagues rather than strangers thrust together by circumstance. Rebecca's transformation from mysterious storm refugee to potential business partner had happened so gradually that Dave found himself accepting her true identity with surprising equanimity. Her expertise and genuine interest in agricultural sustainability aligned perfectly with his own values, creating common ground that transcended their vastly different backgrounds and economic circumstances. The investment opportunity she had presented seemed almost too good to be true, but her detailed explanations and verifiable credentials suggested legitimate interest rather than elaborate deception. The legal documents Rebecca shared during breakfast outlined partnership terms that were far more generous than Dave had expected from a billion-dollar investment firm. Chen Capital Partners proposed maintaining his majority ownership while providing capital infusion, operational expertise, and market access that could transform his struggling dairy operation into a profitable showcase of sustainable agriculture. The arrangement would preserve family control while accessing resources necessary for comprehensive modernization and expansion. Dave's questions about the partnership structure revealed Rebecca's genuine commitment to preserving family farming traditions while introducing innovations that could ensure long-term viability. Her firm's previous agricultural investments had consistently maintained local ownership and community benefits while achieving impressive financial returns through operational efficiency and market diversification. The success stories she described provided concrete examples of how strategic partnerships could revitalize rural economies without sacrificing family values or community identity. Rebecca's laptop contained detailed presentations about Chen Capital Partners' agricultural portfolio, showcasing transformed farming operations throughout the Midwest that had achieved remarkable success through strategic investment and professional management support. The before and after photographs were compelling evidence of what could be accomplished when adequate capital met operational expertise and family commitment. Dave saw his own farm's potential reflected in these success stories, envisioning possibilities he had never seriously considered due to financial constraints. The investment timeline Rebecca proposed was ambitious but realistic, with initial improvements beginning within 60 days and major modernization completed within 18 months. Her firm's project management capabilities could coordinate complex construction and equipment installation while maintaining normal farming operations, minimizing disruption to daily routines and animal care requirements. The implementation strategy she outlined demonstrated thorough understanding of agricultural operations and seasonal constraints that affected dairy farming throughout the year. Dave's excitement about the partnership opportunity was tempered by concerns about maintaining his farming philosophy and operational independence under corporate oversight. Rebecca addressed these concerns directly, explaining that Chen Capital Partners' success depended on preserving the management expertise and local knowledge that made family farms effective competitors against large-scale corporate operations. Their role would be supportive rather than controlling, providing resources and expertise while respecting operational decisions made by experienced farmers. The sustainability requirements Rebecca described aligned perfectly with Dave's own environmental values and Emma's academic interests in regenerative agriculture practices. Organic certification and environmental stewardship programs would not only qualify the farm for premium market pricing, but also demonstrate responsible land management that could inspire other agricultural operations to adopt similar practices. The educational component of their partnership would transform his farm into a teaching facility that showcased sustainable dairy farming techniques. Rebecca's phone rang constantly throughout the morning as her staff coordinated various business activities that required her attention despite her extended absence due to the storm. Dave listened to fragments of conversations that revealed the scope of her professional responsibilities, managing investment portfolios worth hundreds of millions of dollars while maintaining hands-on involvement in individual projects that interested her personally. Her ability to balance strategic oversight with detailed operational knowledge impressed him significantly. The recovery of Rebecca's luxury car became a logistical challenge that demonstrated her firm's resource capabilities as Chen Capital Partners arranged specialized equipment and professional operators to extract the vehicle from its snow-covered burial site. The operation required coordination with county authorities and environmental protection measures to prevent damage to Dave's property during the recovery process. Rebecca insisted on covering all costs associated with the extraction and any incidental damage to his land or facilities, Emma called during the recovery operation, having driven home from university as soon as roads became passable after hearing about her father's adventure sheltering storm refugees in their barn. Her arrival provided an opportunity for Rebecca to meet the next generation of farm management and assess Emma's knowledge and commitment to agricultural excellence. Their conversation revealed Emma's sophisticated understanding of sustainable farming practices and business management principles that would be essential for implementing the modernization program Rebecca had proposed. Emma's reaction to Rebecca's investment offer was enthusiastic but thoughtful, asking detailed questions about partnership terms and implementation timelines that demonstrated mature understanding of complex business relationships. Her academic background in agricultural business provided foundation for evaluating the opportunity objectively, while her emotional attachment to the family farm motivated careful consideration of how the partnership might affect their traditional way of life and community relationships. The afternoon brought a parade of visitors as word spread through the Pine Valley community about Dave's role in sheltering storm refugees and the mysterious woman whose expensive car remained buried in his yard. Tom Rodriguez arrived first, ostensibly to check on Dave's welfare, but clearly curious about Rebecca's identity and circumstances. His farmer's intuition sensed that something significant was developing, though Dave maintained discretion about the investment discussions pending his decision about whether to proceed with formal negotiations. Rebecca handled community curiosity with diplomatic skill, introducing herself as a business consultant interested in agricultural sustainability without revealing her firm's identity or the scope of their potential investment in Dave's operation. Her ability to engage with rural residents while maintaining professional boundaries impressed Dave, who had worried that her corporate background might create social friction within his tight-knit farming community. Her genuine interest in local agricultural challenges and respectful attitude toward traditional farming knowledge earned acceptance from skeptical neighbors. The Peterson family stopped by during their journey home to express additional gratitude for Dave's hospitality and to check on Rebecca's welfare after her harrowing experience during the storm. Their visit provided Rebecca with opportunity to observe Dave's interactions with the people he had helped, confirming her assessment of his character and community standing. The genuine affection and respect his neighbors showed reinforced her conviction that partnership with Dave would be both personally and professionally rewarding. Deputy Santos made an official visit to complete incident reports related to the emergency shelter situation, providing Rebecca with documentation she would need for insurance claims and business expense reporting. Their conversation revealed additional details about Rebecca's background that confirmed her corporate executive status, as Maria recognized her name from business news coverage of Chen Capital Partners' agricultural investments. The deputy's professional demeanor remained intact, but Dave noticed her increased respect for his mysterious houseguest. Evening brought the first formal discussion of partnership implementation as Rebecca's legal team joined their conversation via video conference to explain contract terms and answer Dave's questions about operational changes that would be required. The lawyers demonstrated thorough understanding of agricultural operations and family farming concerns, suggesting that Chen Capital Partners had extensive experience structuring similar partnerships. Their explanations were comprehensive, but accessible, avoiding legal jargon that might obscure important details. Dave's request for independent legal review was welcomed enthusiastically by Rebecca's team, who provided contact information for agricultural law specialists who could represent his interests during contract negotiations. Their willingness to facilitate independent counsel demonstrated genuine commitment to fair dealing and long-term partnership success. rather than short-term advantage through legal complexity or time pressure. The timeline they proposed allowed adequate opportunity for thorough review and negotiation of partnership terms. The financial projections Rebecca's team presented were conservative but compelling, showing how strategic investments could increase the farm's annual revenue from its current level of barely breaking even to over $600,000 within 3 years. The improvements would not only ensure current profitability, but also create valuable assets that could be passed to the next generation or sold if Emma decided to pursue other career opportunities. The enhanced property value would provide financial security regardless of future farming decisions. Rebecca's offer to personally guarantee the investment's success demonstrated unprecedented confidence in both Dave's capabilities and her firm's ability to deliver promised results. Such personal commitment from a billionaire investor was virtually unheard of in agricultural partnerships, reflecting both her assessment of Dave's potential and her firm's reputation for successful rural development projects. The guarantee eliminated most financial risk while preserving upside potential that could transform the Mitchell family's economic circumstances permanently. Dave's decision to accept Rebecca's partnership offer was reached after lengthy consultation with Emma, whose enthusiasm for implementing sustainable farming practices provided additional motivation for moving forward with modernization plans. Her academic background would be invaluable during the transition period, while her commitment to agricultural excellence ensured continuity of family involvement that Rebecca's firm considered essential for long-term success. The partnership would provide Emma with career opportunities and management experience that traditional farming could never offer. The signing ceremony took place in Dave's kitchen 3 days later, with Rebecca's legal team present via video conference and Dave's independent counsel providing final review of contract terms. The symbolism of formalizing their billion-dollar partnership in the modest farmhouse, where Rebecca had recovered from her near-death experience, was not lost on anyone involved. The kitchen table that had hosted their first honest conversation about farming challenges now witnessed the agreement that would transform those challenges into opportunities. Rebecca's first official act as Dave's investment partner was authorizing emergency repairs to equipment that had been postponed due to financial constraints, including the aging tractor that had required increasingly frequent maintenance to remain operational. Her firm's purchasing power achieved significant cost savings on replacement parts and service contracts, demonstrating immediate benefits of their partnership. The psychological relief of having adequate resources for equipment maintenance eliminated stress that had plagued Dave for years. The modernization timeline began with comprehensive facility assessment by Chen Capital Partners' agricultural engineering team, whose recommendations would guide infrastructure improvements and equipment upgrades. Their analysis identified opportunities for efficiency gains that could be achieved through relatively modest investments, while also planning major facility expansions that would accommodate increased production capacity. The phased implementation approach would minimize operational disruption while maximizing near-term improvements. Emma's role in the partnership evolved quickly from interested observer to active participant, as her academic training provided valuable input for planning, sustainable farming practices, and organic certification processes. Rebecca's mentorship helped Emma understand business aspects of agricultural operations that traditional farming education often overlooked, including marketing strategies, financial management, and regulatory compliance requirements. Their working relationship demonstrated how generational knowledge transfer could be enhanced through professional partnership. The community response to news of Chen Capital Partners' investment in the Mitchell dairy farm was overwhelmingly positive, with neighboring farmers expressing hope that successful modernization might attract additional investment to the Pine Valley area. Rebecca's presentation to the County Agricultural Association about sustainable farming initiatives and rural economic development created enthusiasm for collaborative projects that could benefit multiple operations. Her firm's commitment to community development extended beyond individual partnerships to regional planning and resource sharing. The first major equipment installation occurred 6 weeks after contract signing, as automated milking systems replaced Dave's labor-intensive manual operations. The efficiency gains were immediate and dramatic, reducing daily labor requirements while improving milk quality and animal welfare standards. Rebecca's presence during equipment startup demonstrated her hands-on involvement in partnership implementation rather than distant oversight typical of corporate investments. Her genuine excitement about operational improvements matched Dave's enthusiasm for technological advancement. The organic certification process began simultaneously with facility modernization, requiring comprehensive documentation of farming practices and implementation of environmental protection measures that aligned with Chen Capital Partners' sustainability requirements. The certification timeline would allow premium organic pricing to begin within 12 months, providing additional revenue that would accelerate return on investment while supporting environmental stewardship goals. Emma's thesis research contributed valuable documentation for the certification application. Media attention surrounding the partnership began with local agricultural publications, but quickly expanded to national business coverage as Chen Capital Partners' rural investment strategy attracted attention from industry analysts and policymakers. Rebecca's interviews emphasized the potential for private investment to revitalize rural economies while preserving family farming traditions, using the Mitchell Dairy Farm as an example of successful public-private collaboration. The positive publicity created additional opportunities for expanding their rural development initiatives. Dave's transformation from struggling dairy farmer to agriculture industry spokesperson happened gradually as his farm became a showcase for sustainable farming practices and innovative business partnerships. His presentations at agricultural conferences and university extension programs shared practical insights about modernization challenges and solutions, while Rebecca's participation provided corporate perspective on rural investment opportunities. Their collaborative approach to public speaking demonstrated the partnership's success in bridging traditional and modern agricultural approaches. The first harvest season under the new partnership exceeded all projections, with organic certification, premium pricing, and direct-to-consumer marketing channels generating revenue increases that surpassed even Rebecca's optimistic forecasts. The success attracted attention from other investment firms interested in agricultural opportunities, but Dave and Rebecca's partnership had established market advantages that would be difficult for competitors to replicate. Their early mover advantage in sustainable dairy farming positioned them for continued growth and profitability. Emma's graduation from university coincided with completion of major facility modernization, providing perfect timing for her transition from student to farm manager responsible for daily operations under the partnership agreement. Her combination of academic training and practical experience made her uniquely qualified to implement advanced management techniques while maintaining the family values that had attracted Rebecca's initial investment. The generational transition ensured continuity of both family involvement and professional management standards. Rebecca's decision to establish a permanent office in Pine Valley reflected her firm's long-term commitment to rural development and her personal satisfaction with the partnership's success. The local presence allowed more intensive support for the Mitchell Dairy Farm, while also providing regional headquarters for expanding Chen Capital Partners' Midwest agricultural portfolio. Her integration into the Pine Valley community demonstrated how corporate investment could strengthen rather than disrupt rural social structures. The second anniversary of their chance meeting during the February blizzard was celebrated with a community festival showcasing sustainable agriculture practices and rural economic development achievements. The event attracted visitors from throughout the Midwest, including farmers interested in similar partnerships and investors exploring agricultural opportunities. Dave's barn, where he and Rebecca had first discussed his farming challenges, served as the centerpiece for presentations about their successful collaboration. Rebecca's keynote address at the anniversary celebration emphasized how personal relationships and character assessment remained fundamental to successful business partnerships despite technological advancement and corporate complexity. Her near-death experience during the blizzard had provided insights into Dave's integrity and competence that no financial analysis could have revealed, creating foundation for trust that was essential to their partnership's success. The audience of farmers and investors appreciated her emphasis on personal values in business relationships. The Mitchell Dairy Farm's transformation from struggling family operation to sustainable agriculture showcase demonstrated that strategic partnerships could preserve rural traditions while embracing innovation necessary for long-term viability. Dave's increased annual income had eliminated financial stress while providing resources for Emma's career development and community involvement that strengthened social connections throughout the Pine Valley area. The success story inspired similar partnerships that multiplied economic benefits across the region. Dave's reflection on the journey from desperate farmer facing bankruptcy to successful agricultural entrepreneur and industry spokesperson emphasized the importance of maintaining hope during difficult times and remaining open to unexpected opportunities. His willingness to help storm refugees without thought of personal benefit had created circumstances that transformed his family's future in ways he never could have planned or anticipated. The lesson resonated with struggling farmers throughout the agricultural community. Rebecca's annual report to Chen Capital Partners Board of Directors highlighted the Mitchell Dairy Farm Partnership as their most successful rural investment, generating financial returns that exceeded projections while achieving social impact goals that enhanced their firm's reputation and market position. The success had attracted additional investors interested in sustainable agriculture, creating opportunities for expanding their rural development portfolio throughout the Midwest and beyond. The barn that had provided emergency shelter during the February blizzard remained largely unchanged despite comprehensive farm modernization, serving as a reminder of the chance encounter that had created their transformative partnership. Dave insisted on preserving the space where Rebecca had nearly died from hypothermia and where they had first discussed his farming challenges and dreams for the future. The memorial plaque installed during the anniversary celebration would ensure that future generations understood how personal kindness and professional opportunity had intersected to create lasting success. Emma's engagement to Carlos Santos, Deputy Maria Santos's son, who had been among the storm refugees, provided additional connection between the families whose lives had been changed by their shared experience during the blizzard. Their wedding was planned for the following spring in the renovated barn, symbolizing how the location that had brought strangers together during crisis had become the foundation for new family relationships and continued community growth. The Pine Valley area's transformation from struggling agricultural region to sustainable farming, Showcase attracted national attention as a model for rural economic development that preserved family farming while embracing necessary modernization. Rebecca's firm established a regional development fund, specifically for supporting similar partnerships throughout the Midwest, using lessons learned from the Mitchell Dairy Farm to refine their investment approach and maximize both financial and social returns. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.